Eston volum toga, and solemn to be lebet mi vidre, and welcome to the youth political podcast that is PolitiBabble, where this week it is all about the Tory party.
I'm Oliver, and as usual, I'm joined by my superb co-host Archibald, as well as today's guest panellist, Mitzi. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so welcome to the podcast, Mitzi. I'm sure if you don't know her from kind of political Isle of Man Twitter, then, here she is. So, how are you?
Yeah, I'm alright. I've had a pretty good day. Wasn't as warm as I'd hoped, but, it's the Isle of Man. What can you do?
How about you, Oliver? How's your week been?
My week's been okay. Not too much has happened, which is not too bad. Yeah, that's about it for me. Yeah, nothing interesting. I mean, I do get some provisional results tomorrow, so a little bit nervous about that. But
well, best of luck. I'm sure
there's not much I can do now.
There's not much you can do now. Exactly. Well, we do come to the most important, not cake of the podcast, most important question of the podcast, which is, Mitzi, if you were a cake, what cake would you be?
I would be a red velvet cake.
Any particular reason?
Because on the edge, it's white, and you don't really know what's inside it. But then when you get in, it's red, and it's delicious.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. You know, one thing about red velvet cake is I didn't realise till probably sometime last year, I think it was, that it's actually chocolate cake, but it's just got red food colour in it.
It's got beetroot in it.
Oh, it's got beetroot in it.
If you're making like a proper one.
Oh, proper red velvet cake.
Yeah, it's got beetroot in it.
Right, I thought it was just chocolate, but, there you
It
go. And you
depends,
learn something. If you do a proper one, then you learn something new every day, don't
I
you?
can't make a red velvet cake. I tried once.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, yes, we get on to the question of the week, which is, will the Conservative Party's success continue?
Which, obviously, we're talking about UK politics here, and how they've been pretty successful recently.
Yeah, they've been in government for 11, just over 11 years since 2010, which is, so it's pretty successful for a government to stay in that long.
So when is the next general election in the United Kingdom? Is it 2023, I think it is, or 2024?
2024, depending if obviously Boris decides to try and call a snap election before, which he I don't think he will do, but it's entirely possible.
He could do it to just if he's confident.
Yes.
But
could turn out like Theresa May.
Oh,
Yes.
That was embarrassing.
Poor lady.
Yes.
Oh.
So we do obviously what Conservative Party, if you didn't already know, it's the party in government in the United Kingdom. The current leader of the political party is Alexander de Fuffle Boris Johnson, to give his proper name. And it's been in government since
or Bojo, as he sometimes commonly known as.
Indeed, and they've been in government since 2010. It's arguably, I think, the oldest political party in the world. The current Conservative Party was founded about the 1830s. That it does trace its origins, I think, back a lot further, which is quite interesting. And I am, as a disclaimer, a member of the brilliant Conservative and Unionist Party, to give its full name.
And I am not.
How about you, Mitzi? Are you a member of any political party?
I mean, no. I mean, I'm hoping to run for election in the Isle of Man, so I haven't sort of set my loyalties in England yet.
But not this election cycle.
No, they won't let me. I'm 17. Yes. They'll let me pay tax, but they won't let me run.
Yeah, pay tax if you earn it.
They'll pay me enough to. Oh, sorry.
Just to say, Mitzi wasn't declaring her intention live on our programme.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Just to be clear, just to avoid any bias here. So there is obviously. We've seen Boris kind of be the poll-defying Prime Minister in a way. Anything good or bad he does, the polls just seem to be going up and up and up, which I think is pretty impressive. But will it crash? We've seen it obviously in the Cheshire and Amersham general election, I think a couple of days ago, the Lib Dems managed to win the seats, which, was it a freak accident?
I don't think it was, because at the end of the day, you look at it, at the moment, people are not liking the left. They're not liking Sir Keir's leadership. They want Jeremy Corbyn back. Or they decide that Jeremy Corbyn was a good leader.
If you were a listener, Mitzi and our faces did start to grimace after Jeremy Corbyn was mentioned.
People are also sick and tired of Boris and his cabinet, and the way that they've acted over recent months and throughout the coronavirus pandemic, and how they have not been very humane in some decisions, and over recent WhatsApp messages and other debacles with ministers, and the media have been sort of very targetive of his ministers, and not only Boris, on spendings on things like that. So yes, I suppose there's a bit of I think people are a bit tired of either sides, and obviously it wasn't that long ago that we had a coalition with the Liberal Democrats. When that would have been, well, it was with David Cameron.
2010.
Yeah,
So you think it will last, the Lib Dem success? It will maybe continue in other
I
seats.
mean, they've progressed, haven't they?
Mm.
I don't think they've declined much. You know, they're slowly progressing. But obviously, yeah.
We'll see. We'll wait and see. How about you, Mitzi? What do you think?
Sorry. I think that, I remember waiting all night to find out the result of the 2010 general election. I was 10. And I was supporting Ed Miliband. Oh, I know.
Fun fact, was it my mum who went to the same school as him? But that was comprehensive school.
Oh, right.
Was it Ed Miliband or was it his brother?
David.
Oh, David, yeah.
It might have been both of them. I'm not sure, but that might even not be a fun fact, 'cause it might not actually be true. But
Well, we'll see when.
no, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Any characters, please do, Karen.
No, I think that young people particularly, I don't think they're going to forgive the Lib Dems anytime soon for tuition fees. I personally wouldn't vote Lib Dems simply on those grounds. But
So just going on to a tangent here. I had this debating today. Do you think tuition fees should be paid for by government, or do you think it should be private individuals to pay those?
partially like the Isle of Man government does.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd say the same.
I definitely think there's a good element of having that
I think everyone,
that partial payment,
Yeah.
but then also
everyone should have
It
the
should be
right
fully
to
funded.
Be able
to have education
But
at the end
I
of the
think
day.
that students who are able
to pay
pay,
shouldn't.
or,
Yeah.
I feel that they ought to.
Yeah, but then that's when
morally
you
pay.
come to the decision that everyone must pay, because
Of course, yeah. Because then you get
Verity.
discriminatory. Yeah.
Indeed. But obviously, before I give my view, I must play the wonderful piece that I forgot to play to introduce the Conservative Party. So here is The Land of Hope and Glory by Elgar. I won't play it for very long, but yeah. It's a bit crackly too. Yeah, so are we still in the land of hope and glory with the Conservative Party? It was supposed to be my wonderful introduction. But I personally don't think the Liberal Democrats' success will continue. They are very, very good, and historically are very good at fighting by-elections. They do quite a good job at fighting these key local issues. And actually in their manifesto, with the main party and the parliamentary party is actually pro-HS2 and pro other things that the local candidate gave. And then it was kind of very locally focused, just focusing on one area. They're very good at pooling their resources. But in a general election scale where they have to be so spread out, they aren't really much of a viable option. They're interesting bunch.
What does anyone think about HS2? I'd actually forgotten about that.
Oh, I suppose that is related to the success of the Conservative Party, because Conservatives are pushing it for it to go in. I think it will, over the long term, be beneficial. Because they do cut down some ancient woodlands. Yes, it's not the best, but in replace of it, they were planting many more trees, which absorb even more carbon. And it does provide quite a low carbon transport link with London, which I think is pretty good.
So London to Manchester? No, where is it?
Edinburgh?
Yeah, and then it's up north. London to the north.
London
there
to
we
the
are. That's
north.
what I'll say. I'm not entirely sure. But obviously we saw this week a defection from the Conservative Party of John Bercow. He decided to... Well, he wasn't joined the Conservative Party again. He had to go independent when he became Speaker of the House of Commons.
2010. Yeah,
Yep.
He wrote to the chairman of the Labour Party on the evening of the day he became Speaker.
And now he's joined the Labour Party.
Oh, lovely.
So I think that it is quite interesting, because he used to be, when he was in... It's quite interesting to see how his views have changed. When he was in student politics, he used to be fervently, pretty right wing and more socially conservative, member of the right wing Monday Club within the Conservative Party. If you've heard of those, it still exists in a lower form today. It wasn't. It's officially kind of ties were cut with the Conservative Party by the Conservative leadership in about 2002, but it still does have a few members, and it's pushing. It's kind of a more right-wing, traditional Conservative platform. And then he described himself as a Thatcherite. And then now he's gone right over and he's become centre-left. So I think it's quite interesting, his journey. So is that maybe suggesting a swathe of people who his main reasons were anti-Boris Johnson? So will the success continue with that?
Well, I don't think he did. His disclaimer, I think he mainly said that because he was talking about in the Sky News interview. It was saying, I don't actually have a problem with Boris. I just don't seem to like the Labour, the Conservative Party that much. But that may be to do with he was like deflecting off the Boris part because I think he's still up for a peerage. I think he's
from Keir. Yes.
Yeah.
Not it won't get granted anytime soon.
No. So Keir probably wants to give him one now that he's seen he's joined the left.
There were questionings, though, towards the Conservative Party's ability to hold on, because there was obviously it was questionings because it came from a shadow minister in the Labour government on Radio 4 the other day when I was listening, and she said she 100% thought Keir Starmer would become Prime Minister, and I did almost think very, very interesting because if you look at all the poll numbers, lots of people disagree that he'll ever become Prime Minister. So it does pose a key question. Is there a viable opposition to the Conservative Party to stop their success?
Was this the former Shadow Chancellor, Annalise Dodds?
I can't remember.
Scottish?
No, she was still in power, so no. Okay. Well, in power. She's in shadow government. What do you think, Mitzi? Do you think that is there a lack of viable opposition?
I mean, personally, I have been someone who's transitioned from very far left to, I dare not say right, but no, I think that, I mean, the reason primarily I've sort of had that shift is because I find that the Labour Party seems lacking. I don't feel that it represents many views, and I think that sort of it, and I must admit, I do find Boris Johnson as a leader quite charismatic, and it's definitely swayed me over. So to actually answer the question, I think the Lib Dems certainly aren't a viable opposition.
But are Labour was kind of the key crux.
I don't know. I mean, to me personally, no. However, to someone who is ardently left, maybe. Depends if they all pull together.
Because I've seen quite in speaking to left wing people, to generalise them,
yes.
I'd say more further left people than centre. They do quite dislike Keir Starmer. They hate him just as much as they dislike Boris Johnson.
That's not possible.
Apparently it is. And they're rather the Green Party in. So we do maybe see this kind of split between the two main left wing parties, because Keir Starmer has arguably taken the Labour Party more right wing, not right wing, but left, more central. So the Green Party does actually look to win more votes, which could, I suppose, foretell future success for the Conservative Party, which is quite interesting. They have been very successful so far. Boris, as I've said before, anything he does which is bad, he can rugby tackle a Japanese kid, or be very, very charismatic, throwing a ball over his head or riding on a bike, singing Little Raindrops, and the poll numbers do go up. Yeah. So he's a phenomenon in politics, which is why I do think Conservatives I would keep him in until he starts to go downhill.
On the bike, or?
Well, I think we've seen him get away with things recently. Clearly, there's no end to things that you can get away with now.
Like things that no other politician would.
No.
Yeah.
And I think it's to do with his sort of charisma and other things that he's just allowed to get away with it.
And the key catchy phrases like "Get Brexit done" or the beautiful blue passport.
The popularism.
Yes, the populism, which is quite evident.
We saw that with Trump as well. These characters which make promises, which I don't know whether America's been made great again, but
It's arguable. I think my favourite comment from Boris, which I must say does draw me to his charisma, is his comments on the dining table. What sets Britain apart from the rest of the world, is on the dining table. In the dining tables of Europe, and France, they saw the opportunity to eat and have dinner. In Britain, they saw the opportunity to play whiff-waff, if you've come across that. So he does come out with these very obscure statements, which actually, I suppose, make him interesting. It's something different, something obscure, something to talk about in the political scheme. I think that maybe is something.
But what we don't see from him, is, okay, there's this vision, but he's not very clear to the people in some ways.
As is all politics.
I know, but
being clear is the worst thing to do.
You see him in front of the camera. You know, you saw him in those lockdowns over the camera. How many times would you see him doing that message of, you know, these sort of trying to put trust in the people and
it works. It works, which is interesting.
I know, but it was from the worst comment of all was, you're going to lose loved ones before their time, and that was very early on days, and there was no plan. It was didn't attend Cobra meetings and other such things. He left Dominic Raab to get things done, and Dominic Raab was getting things done. The Prime Minister has been allegedly to basically mess around and cause such banter. I find it I'm not a big fan of him.
But regardless of
I find him a great character, but I don't find him the best politician.
So would you say it foretells on any
I think
success?
For success, yeah, I'd give him maybe a 6.5 out of 10. But I think he's a great character for Spitting Image.
If you haven't watched Spitting Image, I would recommend it. It is, especially if you're in the UK, you can watch it free on YouTube. It's an excellent satirical puppet show.
Yes, and they've done a more recent version.
Yes.
It used to be, and they do it on
in the 70s, and then they revamped it recently in 2020.
Yes, yeah, and they do it on many more characters as well. But yeah.
Oh. I was mentioning the streaming platform, but they do on like Dominic Cummings. Like, I must say, his masterful Alien from Zeppelin 5 was.
And they do it on celebrities as well now, and royalty and.
But there's kind of, I would argue, this does help Boris, because he's become this sort of household figure of buffoonery. Oh yes, he's a buffoon, but we like him because he's funny.
Buffoon.
He's our buffoon. He's funny. He's charismatic. That's how he draws votes. It's populism. It's populism by the book.
But I find a lot of people do find that populism very laughable.
Yeah.
Very.
And it works, but
it seems to work.
The scary thing is it works, regardless of what I think. I'm not a massive fan of populism. I think it does kind of have a degradation on our democratic society, but they have to give it to me. It does work at the end of the day. That's why it's populism, in effect. It's especially worked within the working class Tory vote, because I think that a lot of people say, "Oh, the working class hate the Tories, get the Tories out." And then if you look at the working class vote, and then you think, no wonder they aren't voting for the Labour, because then you see the Labour activists, and they say it's like turkeys voting for Christmas, and it's almost dehumanising anyone who votes right, who's working class, because they couldn't possibly vote right. Goodness no, that kind of broke the blue wall.
It's going all red up north. No, it's not blue. Sorry, blue. It's going blue up north. Up north.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think they've done a good job attracting to working class voters, Mitzi?
I mean, I think that in general, working class voters since Gordon Brown have become more and more disenchanted with the Labour Party, and the most logical place to move to if they are active voters is probably Boris Johnson, because I mean you can't really move to the Lib Dems, you know. I mean, you could try, but yeah, no. I think so. I think that they're doing a reasonable job of attracting voters, but I feel like that's more from previous failures of other parties than particularly from them personally.
Interesting. Because I must say it's fascinating to see politics in the UK, because there's almost, ever since Corbyn won against Theresa May, but ever since he failed against Boris, it's kind of just been this really odd system, because I've been looking at a system for now at least nearly 2 years, where there is no opposition to Boris. There's no actually someone who does well in the polls, who actually can challenge him, can be charismatic at the same time, because that kind of is the most important part of politics. To success to fail, you need someone better to take over. But
yeah, that's
kind of the key crux, I'd say.
That is kind of true. Yeah,
Yeah.
you need the Labour Party do need something that's gonna overthrow the Tories. You know, they've tried to go recently with sort of cronyism and trying to have a go at them on that and stuff, but
It's not worked.
It's not. The polls just keep going up. But Mitzi, your thoughts on where they go? What can the Labour Party do? What can the Labour Party do to attract an audience again?
Hopefully nothing.
I mean, personally,
because you, like you say, you started on the left and you've moved over to the right.
yeah. I mean, the reason I've moved primarily is to do with libertarianism. And the Tory Party don't necessarily float my boat with that, but they float it more than other people do. I feel that, I mean, in Wales, there's a big rise of the Libertarian Party at the moment. And I mean, if that was more in Britain, I don't even know whether they even properly exist in Britain. I hear in Wales they're getting quite large. I mean, I would certainly go to that. However, I mean, I think if Labour were to take on a more libertarian touch, it may engage with some traditional leftist voters, but not the majority of them. So, I mean, I don't know what they can do. I think if they wanted to totally rebrand, they could go for a more libertarian approach, but they won't.
No, they won't.
So,
I think it is important to know here, I forgot this at the start, to define a certain few things if you're not so in touch with UK politics. We have obviously Tories we refer to quite a lot. That's basically the shorthand for the Conservative and Unionist Party, which is kind of a bit of a mouthful, the Conservative Party. Labour, again, is the centre-left party in the UK. It did used to be more left-wing, but it's more centre-left, so it believes in kind of a bigger government, a more nanny state, just the state has more control. And I think that does actually cover most of the key terms we've cut, which it might be a bit confusing, just to put that, so listeners know about that.
Yeah, and the Tory Party want sort of low taxes,
well, some do, some don't.
Yes.
Oh, well... We managed to shock Mitzi there, but we go over to the desk of our listeners, where we asked you earlier in the week, do you think that the Conservative Party's success will continue? So we heard kind of Jay, I suppose, he's a kind of long time regular listener, has questioned. I know he's messaging me and saying he questioned the term of success. He doesn't believe the Conservative Party has been overall successful. I argue kind of within election success there is, but I think he mainly points towards the handling with COVID and how they didn't really handle it that well, as Oliver's kind of already got into, and also the success of kind of the austerity measures, which he didn't think were particularly good. So I think that's an interesting part. Do we think that there has been success, I suppose, to start?
well, election-wise, definitely. I mean, I can see it. I see it turning blue. So, I mean, yeah, election-wise. But I think there is definitely an argument that some of the handling of COVID could have been done better. But equally, I do have sympathy for that because at the time, no one knew it was going to happen.
Ah, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously,
I mean, we have been having signs from early on in February, you know, that it was going to sort of happen in some ways.
Oliver has turned Captain Hindsight, the Boris Johnson calls.
No. I'm sorry, but he did not attend the. There was no plan apparently. I'm saying these things allegedly because I don't know for a fact, and I'm taking some things from the WhatsApp messages.
And the joyful, we've got another agreement with that from Emily Thompson saying, what success? We then have kind of Liv saying, yes, that the success will continue. These are quite the short answers to get through. Catherine says no, because people will start to see how awful they are. I have had to change a word there. Neil said, yes, although it won't be long before the Liberals take over the way things are going. Which I think is...
a liberal? What are we counting as a liberal?
I think it's kind of the liberal term has been taken over by what I'd class as woke. And woke, for listeners who don't know, is kind of very socially aware and pushing for social change, activism, mainly through social media. It's like the things of Black Lives Matter is kind of what maybe classed as a woke brigade message. Or maybe... other leftist policies is classed as woke now, and kind of the tearing down statues as another
good.
kind of euphemism for woke.
That one that fell on the head. Yeah.
Yes, so that's kind of what the liberals, as we call them. So I think in the US they do have another term for it, which I can't mention.
Was the statue that fell on someone's head? That was Columbus, I believe.
Oh, I can't remember. It most likely would have been.
So an inanimate object managed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Masood said it's the norm for a British party in politics to do well for a certain period of time before people want change. So maybe that's forecasting it might switch back.
Might do.
Which might do, although the polls currently do not show that trend.
No. Could happen.
Yeah. James said as long as Labour continue to show no real opposition, I think yes it will, which I think
But that's
I can
necessarily
sympathise
credit
with.
to the Tories, is it?
Do sympathise with it. There's no current viable opposition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I see.
Interesting. So we do have consensus for once on an issue.
Crikey.
Well, we do have consensus on other issues anyway.
Until there's a plan and a clear way from the Labour Party.
And a united
I
front.
think and it's also to do with how long. I say if Brexit hadn't have come up, things may be different. Because because people just wanted to get the Brexit out of the way. I think people.
Brexit done.
I think
Sorry,
people,
I'm sorry.
I think people were just sick of seeing it on the news. I mean, that's all it was for about 3 years, you know. But I think it's on the issue that they've been in for power for so long now, is that people are sort of are sticking with it. And
I just want to change in the news cycle, really,
Yeah.
because I love reading the news, I love watching news, I love consuming news, but I did get a bit fed
For
up.
breakfast.
I did get a bit fed up about 2 years after the Brexit had been voted, because Brexit was still the headlines in nearly every single day, and it was getting boring. And then we heard from a couple of Andrews here. So I shall refer to them as Andrew 1 and Andrew 2. Andrew 1 said it better, and Andrew 2 said yes, ultimately England is fairly a conservative place. They've not really been into revolution since Oliver Cromwell, which is fair enough. And then we saw one from our former, one of our founders of PolitiBabble, Brisha, saying it's true corrupt in it. I think that's probably haven't pronounced in it right.
I believe that's how you pronounce it.
That's probably how, but I'm not so up to date.
Oh, fair enough.
Yes.
No, I'm not either.
And that concludes our story time for this week from our listeners. So, thank you for getting in touch. What are our ultimate ending views on this topic? This question: will the Conservative Party's success continue, Mitzi?
I mean, I think for the time being, yes, it will. I think there's definitely an argument that that parties go through cycles and eventually it could just drop out the sky. However, I think that there is no viable opposition as I see it, unless, like in the Isle of Man, everyone decides they're now just going to run as independents, which could work quite well, possibly. But until they do that, which they won't, that's just me being hopeful, then I believe, yes, the Conservative Party's success will continue.
Unless they can turn it around, maybe get a new leader in and have a clear plan and a message.
On Labour fronts, I guess.
Yes, yeah. Then we could see them overturning. But the Conservatives, unless Boris does something incredibly stupid, which, I mean, there's a number of things that he's done at the moment which are quite pathetic, then probably not.
It probably won't continue success.
Oh no, sorry. It probably it'll probably stay the same way.
No,
yeah.
I agree. I think it's definitely a lack of viable opposition that's caused the success, but also Boris's charisma has been quite astonishing of the amount of control.
If there's one thing we can see from history, it's the charismatic politicians who get voted in.
And the ones that make history books as well.
Yes.
Yes, we do like the interesting ones. Well, we come to the historical political figure of the week. This week, it is Winston Churchill, who many of you will know as a famous wartime Prime Minister, and also maybe from his second term. There we go. We move on to our historical political figure of the week, which is, as I've mentioned, Winston Churchill. I'd argue one of the greatest Britons in history. He was a wartime leader. He was Prime Minister of the country, kind of in wartime, and then also he then went out of office and then came back in a term later. He was kind of, I think, best well known for his World War II kind of actions and fighting and standing up to Hitler. And he was very against appeasement at the start. And then after the war, he lost his election, and then he was again elected Prime Minister in 1951, and then died, unfortunately, in 1965. But he's a very famous, great orator. I'm sure you'll know his "We shall fight in the fields, in the streets, and we shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." One of his kind of major speeches, and kind of he was a key conservative figure, definitely.
Yes, I think he did a rather good job in doing so, especially with World War II. Later on, I probably, apart from World War II, I don't know much about him, to be honest. But Mitzi, do you have much to say?
I mean, he clearly did a good job winning the war because we won. But as someone, I don't really believe in war. So I mean, I don't herald him personally as a figure to look up to. But I do understand that in the situation he was in, he did very well. I just don't like the situation he was in, I think.
but if you're in the same situation, so it's kind of going
I mean,
to a philosophical issue, would you declare the war on Nazi Germany?
Oh.
I've asked a tough question.
I mean, honestly, I'm not a Nazi, but I do really object to war, and I think that. I think that in that situation I'd probably resign.
Fair enough.
Things have changed a lot now. I definitely don't agree with war now, especially the nuclear way.
With what they've got now, you can just obliterate.
I know it's probably not the best thing for me to say, considering, I'm of a different generation now. And it's, some people say, oh, well, of course you can say that, but I suppose things were different back then, and sort of war was inevitable in some cases. But we're very lucky now that we live in a world where it's a lot more peaceful in some areas.
In others
did you know his mother was an American? Fun facts. I thought I'd come out with some fun facts here. Yeah, his mother was an American. It was quite common for British aristocrats to marry American heiresses, kind of to save the fortunes of the family estate. It was all kind of, that's quite common. And I think my favourite part of kind of his whole history was his escape from prison camp, because he was a war correspondent as a journalist for a lot of time. And it was I think he was in the Boer Wars, who were fighting the British at the time. He's captured, sent to a prison camp. He escaped by scaling the prison wall and kind of stumbling over to a British coal miner manager, who then stored him in a mine shaft for a few days until he was sent on a Woodfield rail truck back into Mozambique, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
He was a fascinating man, I must say. I know some people nowadays want to cancel him, which I suppose is quite interesting. So, do you think he should be cancelled? Like posthumously cancelled? I think it's utterly nonsense.
I think
there were the views at the time. We wouldn't say that stuff now, but he's dead. He did a brilliant thing. We don't need to wreck his kind of legacy in that.
I think it's good to look back on that history, and it's sort of, I think it's good to look back on that sort of history and realise that that's probably not the right things to say, but we've learned from that, but definitely, yeah.
Well, I must say, I did forget to say actually what my Latin greeting was this week. It was, is that a scroll in your toga, or are you just surprised to see me? That was my illustrious Latin greeting of the week. And I must say, before we continue, we do need to apologise to some of our listeners who appear to say we have classed as accents. I must say it was quite surprising to hear that. Sorry, I forget. We must not apologise for having our accents. We are who we are. So I did find it quite entertaining. What did you think, Oliver?
I don't particularly think I have much of an accent. So
I must say, I did find it interesting. Well, we do move on to, I suppose, our favourite part of the week, which is our news. So
we're going to get the headlines from the Isle of Man, and at the moment, the Isle of Man remains COVID-free. The Isle of Man borders are hopefully going to open further to level 2.0. The NHS app might be able for use for residents within 7 days. Worries on the Isle of Man vaccination vaccination status for some residents, and there's been 33 declarations for intention to stand or seek re-election, and 4 members not to stand. That's the Isle of Man news for this week. So let's start off with let's run through the first topics as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
The Isle of Man remains COVID-free.
Well, arguably COVID-free. We don't know. We've got now testing, which we can choose to pick up at schools, but they're not mandating it.
You can't choose to pick up at school. Your mum has to.
Really?
That's what I've heard.
That's
I was planning to go today, but I forgot to go and think. Oh, I'll pick one up, see what they are.
I've been told that you as a sixth former, I mean, yeah, you can request one. However, your parents must pick it up. That's what I've
amazing.
Heard. Despite the fact that at 16 you can move out
and you can have your own medical decisions.
Yes. Just not that one. That one's too much.
Yes, of course.
I'll have a look into that. But I think maybe
that's what we were told at school today.
Maybe it differs.
Differs probably between schools and policy.
Which usually
it's decentralised, which is kind of the main aspect there. The Isle of Man borders to open. I find it quite astonishing. It was kind of with the Chief Minister saying we'll move to the 2+2 method. And I did find it very interesting how he said it's not discrimination against the unvaccinated, because very clearly it is.
Yes.
Because what is the difference?
The discrimination is kind of defined as kind of favouring one group over another. It does favour the vaccinated over the non-vaccinated. I can't, if I wanted to. The government does not vaccinate me. It's choosing not to vaccinate me because I'm under 18. Which, fair enough, but then don't restrict me because you chose not to vaccinate me.
No,
Children under 5 don't have to be vaccinated. Well, surely put it children under 18.
And surely, and there's people of our age, so it's nothing to do with age. It's nothing to do with age because there's people of our age that are clinically vulnerable.
So they can get it.
And equally, people of our age who medically are unable to take the vaccine because of allergies and stuff.
But then, interestingly, with going on to vaccination, especially with the 2+2 method, those actually having the vaccine can still transmit COVID afterwards. The government was saying that 2 months ago. They're saying it doesn't stop you from transmitting. You must still be careful. Yeah. But now we'll let you travel to the UK, travel to those Indian variant areas, come back over. You don't need tests.
So someone
disease on everybody.
So someone can can get vaccinated on the day that they want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
They need 2 vaccinators.
So
after the day they have the second one, they can leave the island and come back within any day with any
anyone
quarantine.
from the UK can come onto the island if they've had 2 vaccines, which I suppose I find fascinatingly it's silly.
It seems like
it's silly.
And I mean personally, as someone who's quite interested in maintaining rights, possibly people argue to a ridiculous degree, I think in a situation like this where the vaccine doesn't actually stop you from spreading it, it'd be different if it was a complete block out of it.
It reduces the risk.
It does.
And it
reduces,
shows,
if you personally get it, it reduces how badly you get
and
it.
You won't die. You won't die, which is brilliant. It's a good vaccine.
The best thing at the moment is that, obviously, like to say, if I wanted to go away to England
hands,
and come back,
face and space, that's what you must do.
Yes, but if I want to come back from England, then my rest of my family can go out and about, and I just have to do test and release, and at least it's only basically
at least it's only a day
days.
now.
Yeah.
But still, mine's a matter of principle on it.
Yeah, no, mine totally. Yeah. I mean, there's been a petition going around, which I saw. It's begun, I believe, last night. When I signed it, I think I was the 6th signature. It's now at around 400.
Unfortunately, it's online, so the government ignores it anyway, which is another issue.
It'll make a bit of a scene, won't it? I mean, personally, I do think that, like, in a situation, and particularly when there's a lot of religious reasons, people choose not to get vaccinated as well. For example, as I understand it, Jainists can't on the principle that all living things have a right to life. So to inject yourself with something that could kill a virus is killing a living thing.
Well, I know, but then I would argue with science a virus is not living because it cannot survive outside its host. But interestingly,
possibly, but then we can get into all kinds of debates about what's living.
Exactly. But going on kind of vaccinations, I'm sure the government's had. I suppose my main problem is the contradiction. It was going to be, yes, we will never do this. Yes, we have this border framework, going to follow it. Yep, it's fine. No, we don't believe lateral flow testing is any place in our society. We're not going to do wastewater testing. We view it as useless. Now, 2 months later, yep, we're using it all. It's very good. We need it. So I find it very interesting how they've had, no, we're never going to use it. It's not, we're looking to possibilities. Very, very clear. No, and now very clear. Yes. It's
I wonder if the water waste thing, unless they are doing it every hour or so,
Create new jobs.
Yes, we're furthering our economy from the government. Well, we move on from the vaccination tangent.
Yeah.
We do cover it rather a lot. But obviously, we're going to the keys. 33 declarations now, and Oliver and I have launched a youth voting campaign. Do give us a follow at Youth Vote IM. And we need to approach these candidates to get their views and kind of break down politics for these
and see how they're going to what ways they're going to approach the youth and get them to vote for them, basically.
If you haven't registered already, go to gov.im/register to vote. Click on the services.gov.im/register new elector part, register the new elector, and then you are registered if you're not already. That's kind of very important to do. And obviously then go out and vote.
Which is on the Thursday, the 23rd of September, 2021.
Indeed. Do go out and use your vote there. Well, we move on to the UK headlines. There's been a delay in the UK lifting of COVID restrictions. GB News advertisers have withdrawn their advertisements. Biden met Putin. The Prime Minister of Israel has been replaced. And India strips Twitter of legal protection from prosecution. Yeah. Obviously, GB News is kind of hitting one there. We've seen advertisers withdraw their advertisements from the likes of IKEA to, I think, a UK drink manufacturer or something.
Yes.
I'm
not on the first instinct. I wasn't a fan of GB News at all.
I like Andrew Neil's
I knew
stuff.
You've said this before, and I'm not a fan of him. I don't like the layout. There's been multiple failures.
I must say, there's a brilliant. I love. There's a brilliant failures account I follow, which is kind of GB News bloopers.
Yeah. It's been running a week. The people are clearly not trained. They don't have a clue.
I like Simon McCoy. He's good. I like to watch him, and I like to watch Andrew Neil. And it's about a bit about it. So it has its niche, I'd say. But it's more the point is advertisers have withdrawn their thing because they disagree with the news.
It's not my cup of tea.
Which I find interesting because it's an advertisement. You're not saying we endorse this channel. You're merely saying we're advertising to you on it. I think it's Do you have any views on it, Mitzi?
I mean, I don't have TV, so I am lost in this discussion.
Ah, right.
Completely.
It's online. It's online for free.
Is it online?
And it's on Freeview.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, on GB News. Yes.
Brilliant. Have a look at that.
There we are.
No,
GB News have a new launcher. Maybe not.
Well,
Who
I
knows?
might try
Who
it.
knows? Yes. Obviously, Biden met Putin. It was quite an interesting meeting because you always have Putin with a stony face, shaking the hand of the US president. Usually, Trump would have mimicked that mean strong figure, and you have Biden having a big smile. And you just think the juxtaposition here is huge. It's almost like he looks naive in the picture almost.
Well, he said we've got to meet in person, didn't he? I think was one of the things.
Didn't shake his hand, did he?
He did, yeah.
Oh.
They're vaccinated, so it's fine.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry.
But
yeah.
I don't know what vaccine Putin has. They've obviously the Sputnik 5 vaccine over there, which is entertaining. And then the Prime Minister of Israel has been replaced. Netanyahu was ousted from power by a coalition deal ranging from the far left to the far right, really.
Wow.
It was all in a ploy to get Netanyahu out, and you've actually got a more nationalist leader currently as PM for 2 years until it switches over to the left-wing leader, which I find fascinating.
It's an unusual system.
It's very unusual. The coalition has been very broad because they've not been managed to have consistent government. So it is interesting, I suppose. And obviously India strips Twitter of any legal protection for prosecution. So it's making Twitter back into its legal square. I'm sure you've experienced we've all experienced the joys of Manx Twitter here.
Yes.
And Manx politics. I must say it is kind of a left-wing echo chamber on the Isle of Man, especially.
I'm not sure, especially. I mean, I
It is.
have family in Wales, and it sounds just as bad there. I'm not sure it's just an Isle of Man thing. I think anywhere.
It's just Twitter.
It's Twitter. I mean, if you have a look at any of the any of the social media sites that I use, and you can, if you only have a look at the report buttons, it's report for this, report for that. Nothing, and you can report things for saying things against the right. You can as a member of the right, you can be reported and removed. As a member of the left, you're pretty safe.
Yeah, you're safe.
Even
you
if
just call it racist, ho.
Yes.
If it's anything you disagree with, it does seem to be the catchphrase now.
Yes. And someone asks you how, and then you just log off for a few hours.
I have actually actually done that because I was
There
saying
comes
that
a point where they're just shouting
I
too much.
was just like I can't be. I was saying key pinnacle of British kind of values is freedom. I don't see what's wrong with saying that.
Criminal, fascist, and everything.
Yeah, it was, and I must say it was interesting. So, I think India's move is slightly interesting. I think it's more to protect. It is over Twitter's refusal to remove a post, which is interesting because they remove plenty of posts.
Oh, they love it.
But when
It's
they're
their
asked
favourite
to, when they're asked to remove a post, they won't, which is fascinating.
It's like the Rum Tum Tugger from Cats. If
I must say, I
offer
have
him
not watched Cats.
Oh no,
no,
it's
no.
just it's a poem. If you offer him something, he has to have the other thing, even if he actually wanted the first thing.
Ah, yes, of course. That is the way to go. Oh, well, we move on to an interesting random part of the episode where our guest will talk about a topic for a minute. Very, very random, so do talk without hesitation, deviation, or repetition. That's just from the Just a Minute programme on BBC Radio 4. So do take it away, Mitzi. What is your topic?
Shakespeare and how it is not boring.
Go for it.
So, people always. So I'm a big Shakespeare fan. For some background, I want to study literature at university. I absolutely love Shakespeare. I find it fascinating, and I think that people there's just this view in society that it's somehow boring. And then if it's not boring, it's elitist. And if it's not elitist, there's something wrong with you for enjoying it. No, I'm passionate about Shakespeare, not only because it definitely improves your comprehension of reading in general, but because the stories are just so exciting. But when you think when you think about it, like, I mean, stories like Much Ado About Nothing, which at the moment is my favourite one. I like Romeo and Juliet as well, but at the moment it's Much Ado About Nothing for me. When you think about it and you break down the stories, you can nearly see it, and I just love that. And I think that just it's just perfect, and it makes me very happy. So that's my yes.
Very interesting. Honestly, we did have the discussion the other day. It was apparently elitist to expect a good book to have good grammar.
Yes.
It was classes, in fact.
It's classes, yeah.
Do you know, I expect a book to have good grammar. It has an
Largely
editor.
anyway,
It has an editor, and the editor should pick up that good grammar. That grammar.
Yeah.
And it should
We
be
all make
correct.
mistakes, though, Archie.
Of
We all
course,
make
yeah.
mistakes.
We do.
I do.
Yeah.
I do apologise. I personally, my little giggle there was that I don't particularly enjoy much of Shakespeare, but
Fair enough.
you're
Yeah.
fair enough to agree with that.
No, a lot
I mean,
of
this
people don't.
probably.
Yeah.
Just trying to think of anything that does. does
What
that.
literature do you enjoy?
I mean,
Oliver?
it's more. I did quite like 1984.
It is a good
There you
book.
go.
Yes, I think it does draw parallels to the modern.
Mainly-
I'm going to say that.
Mainly, no, it's true.
It does. Yes. Yes.
One of the reasons why I don't really particularly enjoy Shakespeare that much is I find it very hard to understand. But that's
Yeah.
probably because I'm illiterate.
No, but it's taken me years to get to a point from finding the stories interesting
But
to actually understanding
once
them.
you can get there,
Yes.
once you've got there, it's wonderful.
I do
wonderful.
quite like the I wouldn't. It's reading it. I would watch anything by the RSC.
I much prefer reading it.
I
I lie there on a beanbag
do you
with
watch-
this massive book.
have you watched much of anything the RSC work?
Not
But I mean,
particularly,
they
no.
they don't always cover. Sorry, I disclaimer there. They don't always cover Shakespeare stuff.
I must say, I do love watching Shakespeare plays. Though they are.
Yeah, they are
Oh,
good.
no, that-
Sorry, I
yeah.
should say they are good, but the reading part of it, I don't particularly enjoy.
No, I'm going to watch the live stream of it from the Romeo and Juliet from the Kenneth Branagh company. I'm looking forward to that because I've never actually seen Romeo and Juliet like as an actual production. Obviously, I've seen the film where they use the correct language, but I've not seen it, and I'm excited.
Do enjoy. Well, the aircraft engine once again starts up. We move into our recommendations. So, Mitzi, what's your recommendations for reading, watching, and listening this week?
So, I mean, my personal favourite book is The Great Gatsby. This is a discussion I got into about whether a book needs to be well written, but anyway, no, I love The Great Gatsby, and it's a comparatively short book if you haven't got much time to read. And this week I've been reading An Almond for a Parrot by Ray Delaney, which is, I'd say, an arguably female appeal read, but it's very good.
How about watching?
Oh, I don't get to watch much actually. I've been watching Much Ado About Nothing, 1993. I don't have much time, so I've been having to watch sort of 20 minutes ago. But I'm really enjoying that.
I must say, I do love old films. They are this will sound elitist, obviously. The voices are just
They're beautiful.
much better. Yeah, so
They
much
are
better.
beautiful.
How about
I aspire to talk like
Yes.
Mary Poppins.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry.
What about yourself, Archie? Have you got many recommendations for this week?
Well,
Sadly, one does not.
Yes. Unfortunately, Oliver, you've let us down this week. No, my recommendation for reading this week is National Debt: A Short History. I've brought it along. It is arguably a dry book, but I must say it is rather interesting to read about the sinking fund, which I've mentioned before on the podcast. Watching-wise, I do recommend North Korea: The Great Illusion. I must say, North Korea, it's astonishing. The state, I must say. I'll say no more. And in listening-wise, I will recommend The Curious Cases of Rutherford and Fry. It's all kind of sciencey and kind of breaking down maths as well. It's fascinating. It takes on interesting cases, and there's a podcast version rather than the radio version. The radio version is included in the podcast version, but the podcast version is so much more in. It's like 30 minutes instead of 15. So that is, I really do recommend. And next, my different recommendation, I think there was an interesting BBC Sounds podcast I'm about to start listening to as well.
Very good.
Should be good. Well, we do move on to our quiz, which we have our quiz music. I'll only ask you about 3 or 4 questions, why not? So when was the Parliament Act introduced? Any ideas? 1910, 1911, 1912 or 1914?
I've been asked this before, haven't I?
You might, yeah.
Okay, I'll leave this one to Mitzi.
No.
Okay, 19... I've done this before, so I should know. 10 or 11?
It's 11.
11.
I don't know why that came up when I created a Conservative Party quiz. How many times was Stanley Baldwin Prime Minister?
Oh,
If you know him.
don't know him.
No.
But no.
I think he was a Conservative Party Prime Minister. He was 3 times in power.
Wow.
And how many times was Winston Churchill Prime Minister? This has come up in the programme.
Well, he came out of it, didn't he? So twice? Maybe 3 times. 4 times.
Final answer?
5.
He keeps going up, Oliver.
Okay,
Soon we'll reach
twice.
hyperinflation will be several hundred. No, twice is the correct answer.
Twice, but like separated.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed. And how long is the final question related to conservatism? How long in years was Margaret Thatcher Prime Minister?
11.
11. Oliver, any answers?
Was it around 1980 when she started? No, before that.
How many years? How many years was she in
15.
power? 15. No, Mitzi, you are correct. It is very good. It is 11.
I feel special now.
Yes, and that ends our quiz for today. I couldn't think of any more questions, so
Good.
we
I'm
have
glad.
anxiety-intensing music is now coming to an end, so you can now relax, which is rather nice. Yes. I did enjoy finding the music for this season of the podcast.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable to kind of look through and get some good tracks.
And I think that pretty much concludes this week's episode, guys. And obviously, if you do have any thoughts or any other comments, please...
Topics you want to discuss.
If you want to be a guest, please do let us know via our social media platforms or our email address, which is politibabble@gmail.com. And I'd like to thank Mitzi for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And again...
Great having you here.
Yeah. So yeah,
that concludes the brilliant podcast that is PolitiBabble for this week. You can join us next time for relaxed chat about politics, and we'll probably be talking about cancel culture. So leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. As usual, you can find the podcast versions of this podcast on your favourite podcast providers. Do get in touch at PolitiBabble on all forms of social media and let us know your views.
that's it for now. You've been PolitiBabbled.